The closing line of today's gospel, I came so that they may have life and have it more abundantly, is John chapter 10, verse 10. I'm a Catholic priest, not a Protestant minister, so I don't know a whole lot of verses by memory. But I do know that one, John 10:10. It's one of my absolute favorite in the scripture. It dates from the fact that one of the first powerful religious experiences of my life came when I was meditating on that very phrase over and over again in the context of my making the spiritual exercises a long retreat based on the prayer principles of St. Ignatius Loyola. I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. John chapter 10, verse 10. At the time, I had been suffering from a debilitating condition of an inordinate fear of the dark. It had plagued me from the time I was a youth. From the time I was a child, I used to wake up with terrible nightmares in the middle of the night. And even as a teenager, I was afraid to sleep in the dark. I had to have a light on in my room. But it was meditating on this phrase, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full, that began to make a difference in my life. And I experienced a profound healing that came. I don't believe that I'm the exception. I think my experience is the rule. The Lord wants to heal each and every one of us from whatever it is in our lives that holds us back from an abundance of life. But every one of us have things that rob us of the newness of life that Christ wants us to experience. One of the major themes of Pope Francis's papacy is that as we grow and mature as adults, we need to learn how to discern. And what he means by that is based on, in part, today's gospel. Jesus says, my sheep recognize my voice and they follow me. They don't follow the voice of the enemy. The fundamental principle of discernment is that there are lots of voices in our heads. You heard it in the opening prayer of today's Mass. There are these different voices that are in our heads. There's a demon on our shoulder that is whispering, and there's an angelic voice. There's the voice of the Good Shepherd. There's the voice of God. Sometimes it's very obvious to tell which is which, but sometimes it gets very confusing. And as we grow and we mature in our faith, we recognize this is the voice of the demon. I don't want to listen to it. And this is the voice of the Good Shepherd. This is the voice I want to follow. In my case, it was this inordinate fear. It was based in some trauma that had happened in my childhood that left me paralyzed with fear of the dark. And the path for healing was really beginning to believe in the depths of my heart that God was not out to get me. Beginning to believe in the marrow of my bones that Jesus is who he says he is. That we can take quite literally John 10:10. I've come into this world for a purpose, and that purpose is to free you from your fear. That purpose is to bring you abundant life. But of course, what's the problem? The problem is that life often looks like death. And that's this Paschal mystery that we continue to celebrate. For 40 days, we journeyed through Lent in this process of purification. And now for 50 days, we celebrate the joy of Easter in preparation for Pentecost, the gift of the Spirit, the fullness of God's life within us. The Paschal mystery is to continue to believe that in the ups and downs of life, in this Paschal mystery, Jesus is not going to abandon us. But we need to learn to recognize his voice calling us to abundance of life. That's the hope and the promise of the gospel. It's not some pie in the sky, super idealistic reality. It's a skill that Pope Francis says every one of us need to learn if we're going to mature in faith. We have to move beyond simply following the rules, as important as those rules are, and to be able to listen to the voices inside our head and to say, this voice is calling me to life, this voice is calling me to death. Let me end with a prayer poem that I wrote reflecting on this truth. Lord of life, when I am beset by fear, and the demons from hell would lay waste to my soul, help me to remember what you have promised. I have come that you may have abundant life. When I stumble in the dark and all light seems lost, when I forget who I am and why I am here, let me remember one pledge that will never be broken. I have come that you may have abundant life. When disappointment crushes my hope and the sadness of my sin steals all joy from my heart, oh, may I be graced to believe this one healing truth. I have come that you may have abundant life. Amen. Amen.